No, I just want to say obviously thanks for having us on. I've been in obviously a few times, so obviously quite nice to be asked on, and hopefully people can take something from tonight. So yeah, I'll just start. Obviously, as I've started as a youngster, I started off. A lot of people in the area will know Castletown Juniors. I started off there, going through their junior system at under fives in the nappy squad. It was there with people that know Erwin Wallace. It's still going even now to the day. It's still a feature of Castletown's club, and I think it's a fantastic thing for people to get involved. And Erwin's absolutely tremendous when it comes to getting people involved. He's a magician on the side as well, which obviously makes it a lot of fun for kids. I was there for 5-6 years before John Halpin picked me up at a holiday camp in Penrith, and they asked me if I'd like to go down and train with the Centre of Excellence at Carlisle. I was there through 2-3 seasons. And at the end of the under-14 season, there was a 17-man squad that needed to be trimmed down to the to 16 before moving up into the under-15s. And that one unfortunate person was myself that got trimmed. So yeah, that was probably one of the hardest setbacks. Obviously, as a youngster, playing for a club like Carlisle was obviously everybody's dream around the county at that time, and even now. When you look back, it was a real tough time for me. But I decided that it was one or two things. I could either sulk or I could prove people wrong. And that was the mentality that I had, even at a young age. I've been brought up on a farm and as a kid. And I was always taught that hard work was the first and foremost. And that's what I've done. I went back to Penrith Juniors, which was then merged between Castletown and Petergill at the time when I was younger. I played there for 2 seasons. And we were the first team in the Penrith under-16s to win the cup that was between the Westmoreland and the Cumberland Cup. I can't remember the name of it now, but it was the first time that had been won by a Cumberland team in quite a while. At that time, one of my good friends was at Queen of the South, and they'd been asking for a left midfielder or a centre midfielder where I was playing at that point, and he'd recommended me. I went up for a training session. Ended up joining them for the last 6 months on my under-16s. And again, at that point, I was offered what was called a C form then, which was a part-time youth contract, which obviously would mean when I left school, I would have a choice to make, obviously, between what job I would do as a part-time footballer. But at that point, Gretna contacted me through Stuart Rome, who'd seen me in schools, probably even before I was at Carlisle United, and asked me if I'd like to go up on trial because Gretna was starting up a scholarship for 16 to 18-year-olds, and there was trial night and I should go and have a go because it's full-time football. I went up there, done the trial night, and straight after the game, Rowan Alexander and Derek Fry sat me in their office and they offered me a 2-year scholarship and a 1-year pro contract there and then, which then I had a decision to make, which was, do I go to Queen of the South, who were in Scotland's first division at that point, and play part-time and also go and probably work on my dad's farm or a neighbouring farm, or do I go full-time with Gretna? So obviously it was a tough decision for me because Gretna was just coming into the Scottish Third Division, 2 divisions below Queen of the South, but I was always in my mind wanted to be full-time footballer, so that was the path I took. And obviously took me on to Gretna. Do you want to move the slide on one, James?
Yeah, I have. Well, just it might take a bit of time on your side.
Okay.
Show it.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you. So obviously, my senior career started off at Gretna, even though I was a 2-year in the scholarship. I was playing through the leagues with them. This was at the time when Brooks Milson was involved, and his dream was to take Gretna to the SPL. I'll never forget the first time I met Brooks Milson. He came in to the club. Rowan Alexander pulled me into the office and he said to us that, can you do me a favour, son? Can you run down to the shop and get me a pack of 20 fags? And it was one of them ones that he handed me over a £50 note and a scholar that was on 45 quid a week. A £50 note looked like I'd won the lottery. So it was a bit strange. So I went down, got his fags, came back up, and he told me to keep the change, which was about 45 quid. So I doubled my wages by just running to the shop for Brooks. But again, that wasn't what Brooks was. Brooks wasn't flash. He was just genuinely a nice person. He always had time for the youngsters. He made sure that every youngster was on the bus, and if they'd missed our last bus back into Carlisle, then he'd give us a lift back through to Carlisle. That's the type of person he was. I played 2 or 3 times in my first season. I made my debut at Albion Rovers, playing against Kevin McAllister, who played for Chelsea previous in his career. I was lucky I had the likes of Gav Skelton, who's a big influence on my career, and even now is a huge influence on me. But moved to I actually went on loan to Brechin when Gretna were in the 2nd division, and Gretna, Rowan Alexander pulled me in. And he said to us, he says, "Look, it's time. I think you need to go out on loan, get some experience in the 1st division, because we're going to win this league, and we're going to use you a lot next year in the 1st division." I went there for the last 10 games of the season, played every game, and that was something that I felt was very important in my development. Is that that loan move was key for me getting into that environment of playing first team football every week. Something I think that is lacked a little bit now. I think it's a mentality that youngsters have, especially that if you're being requested to go out on loan, it's because you're not wanted. It's not seen as, oh, well, I'm in his plans for the future or anything like that. So again, came back to Gretna the following season, and I played over 85% of the games in the 1st division, and we went on and won the league with the last kick of the ball when we were away at Ross County to get us up into the SPL. I was only in the SPL with Gretna for 6 months before Dundee United approached me around Christmas time, and my agent, and I was sold to Dundee United in the space of about 2 or 3 days. That was a quick turnaround, obviously, for myself. I was only there 18 months. I'd been suspended for the second part of for the first 2 games of the 2nd season. The manager had brought in another left back in the summer. Started the games, had 2 assists in his first 2 games, and played more or less every single game in the 2nd season. And I only made about 4 appearances. After that, I decided that it was time to move on, which I'd moved down to St Johnstone, who were 20 miles south of my house while I was living up in Scotland, while Dundee United were 20 miles north. So it was a perfect move for me. I went there, and I think I only missed 3 games in the full 2 seasons that I was there. So it was great to play week in, week out, and enjoy my football again, and make sure that I was doing what I needed to do. Following that, I was keen to stay at St Johnstone, but I felt that the manager was going to be on the move soon, and it was the manager that I'd really enjoyed working for. As much as I liked St Johnstone as a club, it was always the manager that had to pull for me over the actual club that time. There was a big chance for me to come back to Carlisle after the St Johnstone days, and just as we were in the midst of talking about the contract, Hearts came in for me and offered me a deal that, when anybody that knows Hearts, it's a $22,000 seater stadium, top of the range training facility, and the biggest club in Edinburgh. So for me, it was always ever going to be going there. As hard as it was to obviously turn down coming back to Carlisle, but without a formal offer and Hearts coming in, it was Hearts that was obviously pulling for me. Unfortunately, I went through some great times at Hearts. I played in Europe against Tottenham. I played in Europe against Liverpool. I played in the cup final and scored against our local rivals, beating them 5-1, having a fantastic party, as you can imagine. 200,000 people lined the streets on the Sunday for our open top bus parade. And then the 2nd season started fantastically well for me. We were great. It was going well. We were just unfortunately been knocked out by Liverpool in the Europa League. We were playing Motherwell away, and I went up for a header, landed down, I blew my ACL out, and I was out for 9 months. And that was me. Hearts went into administration at that point, and unfortunately that was the end of my Hearts career, and it was a hard one to take. Again, there was an opportunity for me to come back to Carlisle, but for whatever reason it just didn't quite work out after Hearts. I then moved to St Mirren with an old teammate of mine from Gretna, and I just couldn't find the form that I had previously to my injury, and I couldn't get my head around why I couldn't be that same player. And probably at the lowest point of my career in that point. We played Hibs away. Obviously, as a Hearts player, you're hated. And I got sent off with 2 minutes to go for trying to take a quick free kick, and someone blocked it, and I was looked as the aggressor and got sent off. Ended up having a changing room bust up with the assistant manager. And that was me the last time I played for St Mirren, and to be honest with you, that was the lowest point in my career, and that was the point I was thinking it's time for me to go home and set up roots and get back to normal life and just get a job 9 to 5 and see what happens. If someone had told me at that point that I'd have gone on and gone into management, into coaching, there wasn't ever one chance that would have happened. I absolutely hated football, didn't want to play it, didn't want to be involved in it, just wanted to see the back of it. And I think it all came obviously from the injury and not being able to find my form again. On the second last day of the transfer window, I decided that was me. I told the club I wanted to leave, and I was going home. We were sorting out the end of contract termination, and at that point, I spoke to a friend of mine in the BBC, and he spoke to the Dunfermline manager. The Dunfermline manager was Jim Jeffries, who signed me at Hearts, and someone who now I don't think he realises how much of an influence he's had on my career and impact he's had on my career to date. And he phoned me up. They were in Division 1 at the time, which Dunfermline had financial problems. They couldn't afford to pay players. They'd gone into administration and gone from the SPL to the bottom of the pile, and were working their way back up. He phoned me, asked me if I'd go and sign for them, and I said I couldn't because it was 2 divisions below. I had a roof to put over my family's head. It was a financial restraint, and he offered me the opportunity to go there. A house paid from the club and one of the directors and sponsored. And he said, come back and fall in love with football again. And that's exactly what I did. I went there, spent 6 months there, and literally couldn't wait to get into training every single day for a manager that knew how I could play. And he built me up from the rock bottom right the way back up to where I was again. I was there for 6 months. He offered me a contract to extend my stay, but after we missed out on the promotion. We got beaten in the final by our local rivals, unfortunately. And at that point, Davy Irons and Graham Kavanagh were at the playoff final game. I spoke to them after the game, and they offered me a chance to come back to Carlisle. At that point, my wife was pregnant with my daughter, and we just felt that it was the right time to come home and set up roots. 5 years, obviously, at your hometown team, a team that I've stood on the terraces and watched as a kid, a team that I've got a massive affiliation with, in and out the community. Everything that I wanted to be was at Carlisle, and obviously, as you can see there with the stats, it was probably the most prolific I was as a goal scorer and also playing every week. And I think obviously to be made captain of your hometown team was a massive honour for me as well. I'm going to pop that one on, James.
Sorry, mate, I was muted there. Not a bad career, eh? Dan, just before we move on, because I just wanted to touch on a couple of things because I think it'd be relevant to just take you back to your youth career. There's a lot of coaches on here. Now, when you've talked about a positive and a negative experience you had, so the first one I picked up on was you mentioned Erwin. Now, I know a lot of people probably know Erwin in here, and you mentioned what an experience he gave you to start with. So a lot of coaches on here now will probably be at that stage where they're giving kids experiences. What was it about Erwin that sort of kept you in love with the game, I suppose?
The discipline with an enjoyment was the biggest thing for me. And as you'd always have the laugh of that if you done something, you'd have to go and touch the wall, but then he'd time you. So there was that side of the fun side of it. But then it was a case of if you hurt yourself, it was right, come on up you get. It was just the way he went about it, and he was just so positive around everything. Even though when he was coaching us at times, it was obviously if you were misbehaving as a 5 and 6 and 7 year old, he would still tell you, but there was still an enjoyment in it, and you enjoyed the attention that sometimes he gave you, because he would pull out a magic trick sometimes and things like that. And that's what Erwin was like. He was fantastic, and as you said there, he made it an experience that I think if you speak to anybody now that's ever been involved with the Nappy squad, will all say the exact same thing. They loved it from an early age. There was none of this. I know obviously it's harder now, but kids would turn up and they'd be quite upset and I don't want to do it yet. And he'd literally just go and grab them by the hand. Come on, we get involved, you got them involved, and that was them there straight away, and that was them as soon as we were engaged with it, doing little fun drills, and that was them away really.
Yeah, it sort of kind of puts on to the next bit then. So them type of skills that you learned there, you mentioned that you were the only one to be dropped out of that Carlisle squad to trim this squad. How did you deal with that as a 14-year-old?
Very upset, very upset for probably the first few weeks. But then I actually decided that it was that point that, right, now it's up to you. Now it's, do you accept that someone's told you you're not good enough, or do you push on? And it was that was the decision I made. And I know plenty of people that have had the same question, and unfortunately they've just accepted that they weren't good enough. And I think that's something now. I think even a mentality switch that I've seen in youngsters now, it's an acceptance sometimes, and I think it's something that gets instilled from an early age. The acceptance: do you accept it, or do you want to drive on and be successful? And I think that's something that we obviously, it's a very fine line sometimes between being what you'd call a results-driven coach, but still having that determination to push them on and want to be successful.
Yeah, spot on, mate. Spot on. There you are, pal. I think I fired you on a little bit.
Yeah, so these are the managers I've obviously been lucky to work under. I worked under Rowan Alexander and Mick Wadsworth at Gretna. Rowan was there from day one right the way through to the 6 months previous to us going up to the SPL. Rowan was, what's the word you could use? Old school manager. It was how it was, and it was it's no papering over cracks. If you were wrong, you were wrong, and he told you you were wrong. And it didn't matter whether you were 16 or whether you were 36. He told you in the exact same way. And you look back and you think, oh, wow, how harsh was he at times? But even now, we speak as a youth team, that there was myself and a few others, and we all said that didn't just prepare us for football, it prepared us for life. We had to wash the kit, we had to cut the grass, we had to pull out frost sheets onto the pitches. And you had a responsibility. I'll never forget one night we were playing East Stirling away, and I travelled with the first team every time, whether I was on the bench or whether I was going as a spare man. I was always the one that travelled, and we get up to East Stirling and I'm unpacking the kit and I'm looking around and thinking there's no slips in here, there's no undies for the lads. I daren't tell Rowan this, so I just said, Rowan, there's no undies. And he just said, right, phone. It was actually Kyle Armstrong. I don't know if many of you know Kyle Armstrong. He plays for Carlisle City at the moment, but Kyle answered and he's like, oh, what are you phoning me for? And it was Rowan had my phone, and Rowan just said, be prepared for tomorrow, get some sleep and put the phone down. So obviously Kyle's texted me asking what's going on. I've told him, and from then it was like, oh no. We getting on the following morning, and it was torture. Running session upon running session upon running session, and again, you wouldn't get away with it now. Times where it's been absolutely chucking it down. We were hiding in porta cabins cleaning boots, and he'd with a heater on, and he'd come in and he'd get us all out running with just in our shorts and t-shirts, things like that. But again, as much as it was, when you look back now and you think how crazy it was, it set you up because you had responsibilities to take, and if you didn't do them properly, then you got punished, and that was part of it. So, yeah, obviously Rowan was good for me because obviously he was one of my first managers. Went on to Mick Wadsworth. Mick wasn't someone I ever seen eye to eye with. I think it was probably a personal thing for me that I felt that Rowan had been unfairly treated, and Rowan and myself had quite a good relationship from me coming in and the 6 years that I'd been there. So I felt that maybe it was a little bit harsh on how it had happened. So I think I probably had a little bit of personal vendetta there. I've spoke to Mick since, and we still speak now. Ian Campbell was a very passionate manager, someone who you would run through a brick wall for. I was only there 10 games, but loved every minute of it. Craig Levine at Dundee United, he's gone on and managed Scotland, managed Hearts, clubs like that. One of the best managers I've worked for. His fear factor is something you will never ever come across in the game. It is scary. You would you wouldn't even have to speak, but you'd be terrified of what he was thinking and all these types of things. Him and his assistant Peter Houston had a perfect relationship. Obviously, I was out the team a lot, and I used to speak to Houston every Friday, have a rant, knowing that what would go back to the manager would be enough, but it wouldn't be over the top and saying I was saying things I shouldn't be saying. One of the stories I can remember from Craig, we were playing Aberdeen away. We were getting beat 2-1 at half time, and our goalkeeper had thrown one in. And one of the Irish lads, Willow Flood, had come in, who used to play for Man City, and the Polish goalkeeper. And he comes in the thick Irish accent. I'm not going to try the accent, but he comes in and he says, "Any chance of you putting your hands in them gloves today?" Well, Craig hears it, comes bursting through. Well, we had about 4 or 5 Irish lads in the dressing room, and he thought it was actually Noel Hunt. So he says, "You're having a go at him, and you can't even hit the barn door, so you're coming off." So he whips him off for Willow Flood having a go at him. But that was Craig. You were terrified of like saying things that you shouldn't say, because he'd stick up for anyone, even though you had that fear factor about it. So again, that was great. And as much as he's got the persona of being a very tough talking and tough person, you could knock on his door, and yes, it was hard to walk into his office sometimes, but you walked in there and you knew what you would get. You'd always get the truth from him, and that's why I always thought he was a great manager. I then moved on to St Johnstone, Derek McInnes, and I'd probably put Derek McInnes as probably the best, if not one of, but if not the best manager I worked under. His man management skills were amazing. You knew where you stood. You were prepared enough, but not over prepared. He just had everything right. He's gone on and managed Bristol City and Aberdeen now, and he is a fantastic manager. And it wouldn't surprise me if he went on to manage a lot higher as well. But he was someone obviously that we got on really well with and had a great relationship with, and that he was one of the biggest reasons why I left Dundee United, left St Johnstone, because I felt like it was only a matter of time before he moved on, which unfortunately he did, and it justified my decision. Then moved over to Hearts to work under Jim Jeffries, someone who, again, I spoke about earlier, how much impact he's had on my career. I don't think he realises, and he's someone I still speak to now and ask for advice. I was on the phone to him just last week at times. He was only there for a short period. He unfortunately, we were owned at the time by Vladimir Romanovich, who was a Lithuanian guy, and it didn't take much. I think Jim had gone 19 games unbeaten in the previous season, and then we lost the first 2 games of the season, and that was him gone. So it was very, very strange to see the back of him after what he'd done the previous season. Paolo came in. Paolo's a manager. He's managed at Sporting Lisbon, Cluj, APOL in Cyprus. He's a typical foreign manager. Everything's tactical. Everything's based around how you're going to play, where you're going to play, where you're going to attack, who you're going to attack, things like that. So it was a very different approach from us, which took a bit of getting used to. But he was approachable, and we went and spoke to Paolo and said, "Look, we're not doing enough high intensity stuff. Is there any chance we can change it up a little bit?" And he did, and he got the response from the boys that he wanted, because he got us through to the cup final, beating Celtic in the semi-final, and then beating Hibs in the final. So he got everything that he wanted. Paolo's someone that, like I say, I still speak to some of the managers now, and Paolo's one of them. He's very, very good. We played Celtic in the Scottish Cup final, Scottish Cup semi-final, and he made everyone go out after the win. We all had to be in Edinburgh, so we all went out with our wives and girlfriends, and he came over, introduced himself to my wife, and then he just turned around to me, and he literally didn't even think about it, just stuck the headbutt right on the middle of my forehead, and it was just like, "What are you doing?" But that was Paolo. He was just so intense, and it was just crazy. He was just a crazy foreigner. He was smoked like a chimney. You wouldn't see him at half time, but you'd hear the fire alarm go off in the stadium sometimes, because he'd be out in one of his offices having a fag, and that was what he was like though. But he was brilliant, and he stuck by his players. At times, he was trying to be influenced by the owner on what team he had to pick, and stories coming out of Hearts afterwards that if he'd have picked a certain team and lost, his job was on the line, but he trusted the players that he had and things like that. So that was him. Unfortunately, after the cup final, Paolo had he'd sort of fallen out with the owner, couldn't agree a new contract, and he left. Starting a new season with John McGlynn, someone who was connected to Hearts quite a lot, was someone who I never really seen eye to eye with. He was someone who felt that youth team was going to be the team that played for Hearts, and that was hard. He went publicly and said that I wasn't needed, type thing, and it was only 3 games in and I was back in the team. So that sort of swung around quite quickly. Danny Lennon, obviously an ex-teammate of mine, it just didn't work, and I felt like it was something that obviously, unfortunately, just it wasn't right for me, and it probably wasn't right for Danny either. I was at a bad place in my career, and unfortunately he got the brunt of it, and I fell out of love with the game, and fell out with a former teammate and his assistant. But again, moved on after that, went to Dunfermline with Jim Jeffries, as I said previously. He's someone that he kept me in the game, gave me a chance of falling back in love with the game. Went back down to Carlisle, worked under Graham Kavanagh a very short period. He was, unfortunately, he couldn't keep them away from relegation for the first, from the League One at the time. Came into the second division, signed a load of us, and we didn't get off to the best start, and that's when he's in the door, unfortunately for him. But someone who I felt was very good, very passionate about the club and wanted the club to succeed. And I think sometimes probably struggled because the players we couldn't do what he could have done in his prime, and he couldn't understand why, maybe. And I think that was possibly a downfall for himself. Keith Curl came in, made a lot of changes, and again, I was the only survivor from the Graham Kavanagh time. I was the only person that ended up surviving right the way through to the end of Keith Curl's reign, and he made me captain, gave me contract after contract, and he's the first time I got my new contract. He'd only been in the door about 3 or 4 weeks, and we played Portsmouth away, and we got beat 2-0. And he comes in after the game. We hadn't played very well, and I personally felt I'd had a good game, but the team had lost 2-0, so obviously we were gutted. Came through the door, and I'm sat in the changing room. He's going absolutely crazy. He turns around to me, and he says, "You come and see me on Monday morning, I want to speak to you." Obviously, that's the last thing you want to hear as a footballer at 5 o'clock after you've just got beat. I'm thinking, have I swore at him? Have I said something and he's thought towards him? Have I done something? And I'm racking my brain. And he said, "Do you want to know what it's about?" And I just didn't know what to answer. I answered yes, and he just said, "You're getting a new contract. You're exactly what I want at this football club." So obviously the relief. I get back on the bus. We've just been beat 2-0, but I'm getting offered a new contract. I don't know whether to smile or whether to obviously sit down and mourn like I normally do. Obviously, Keith left, and then John Sheridan came in. That was a strange period for myself. It was someone who neither of us seen eye to eye with each other, unfortunately, and it just didn't work. He obviously wasn't there for very long. He left at the Christmas period, and Stephen Pesley came in, who I got on really well with, and I had a good relationship with the manager and a captain. We'd go to away games and we'd sit and have a coffee in the hotels and talk about stuff. But unfortunately, I just couldn't do what I normally could do because I was injured, and that was when it was under Stephen that I realised that it was time to call it a day. I had a good sit down and conversation with him regarding my own personal stance, and he just wanted me to make sure I was doing it the right thing, and that was it really. But some of the things that I've taken, and I have literally everybody on that list I've taken something from, whether it's good, whether it's bad, negatives, what you need to do, what you don't do, and I've taken a lot from every single one of them.
Just on that, Dan, I'm really interested in, you mentioned Jim Jeffries quite a bit, and you said that he built you back up. Can you just sort of describe or explain what he kind of done to, because if we talk from a coach's perspective about kids with or players with sort of low self-esteem, maybe low confidence, what was it that he done to kind of build you back up from pretty much a real low point in your career, I think you said?
Yeah, I think it was his man management skills. He'd pull you in for a meeting, how you're feeling, is family okay? So you'd straight away feel like you were in the club, you'd been in there a while. You'd put a simple crossing training that I've done thousands of times, and it'd be something silly along the line. There's a Danny Grainger we know. There's a Danny Grainger we know. That's why we've brought you in. Just little things like that. Making you feel like you were, making you feel like you were part of decisions, even though you probably weren't. Asking your opinion, what do you think of that? Just a really good man management skill, and for someone who was probably, I've spoken to previous managers that I've worked under now, and one in particular always says to me, I find it hard to coach sometimes now because I can't blanket conversation people. I can't just make a statement to the whole group and that's it done. You have to make 2 or 3. And for someone who was probably brought up in that era, his man management skills were far ahead of anything that you would have expected from someone there. But that's why he's been such a great manager in my eyes. He was very honest. Again, as much as I say to you there, he was great cross. If I'd hit the front man with a corner or I hit a free kick over the bar, he'd be the first to turn around and say, hey, you're better than that. Make sure you get that next time. And it was just little comments, but it was he knew every player inside out. And the way he spoke to youngsters, the way he spoke to seniors, the way he spoke to experienced players, he knew how to get the best out of every single one of them. And it was something that I take now, and Ruddy will back us up when I say that, and it's always the same now. Everything that he went on about was always we, always us. It was never you or me or them. It was never a divide. It was always an us. If we fail, it's not if you fail, I'll be the one getting the stick in the press. If we fail, I'll be the one that looks after you. All that type of side of it, and that's things like that I've taken from managers like him, and there was others that were like that as well.
Before we move on, does anybody have any questions they want to shout up with especially around the career path and the managers, or do you want to bash on and we do questions later? Feel free, guys, just to jump in as and when you need to. This is where Ruddy's been playing around with your flyings, hasn't he?
He was telling me how to do it, but yeah. Yeah, obviously my highlights of my playing career. I was very, very lucky to win the Scottish third, second and first division with Gretna. Not obviously back-to-back titles. I got a medal for the third and I got a medal for the first. Unfortunately, I only played 6 games and you needed 10 to get a medal in the second, but you still felt part of it, and that's what obviously you wanted. Scored my first professional goal for Gretna. It was against Queen of the South. It was a free kick that me and Gav Skelton actually messed up, and I just smacked it and ended up flying in the bottom corner. So I've got Gav to thank for that one, because it was a bit of we got messed up that time. I think obviously making my Premier League debut in Scotland was massive for me. It wasn't a great one. We got beat 4-0 at home to Falkirk, but to be able to obviously play in the SPL was something that I dreamed of from the day I signed for Gretna, and obviously being able to do it with Gretna was special for me, because I felt like it was a club I had a real attachment to, as did 3 or 4 of us. The first transfer to Dundee United, as I spoke about previously, to have a club like Dundee United watching you and wanting you, it was a real highlight for me, because they were a team who were on the up and they were wanting to go forward. Playing against Barcelona, I've been very obviously lucky to play against Barcelona. We played them in a pre-season friendly, and they were unbelievable. Playing against Messi, obviously you can see the picture on the side there. Playing against Messi, Thierry Henry, players like that was incredible. Again, European nights. You always hear about these things when people say, "Oh yeah, the European nights are unbelievable." And the atmosphere in a European night is completely different to just a night under a game under the lights. Everyone loves a game under the lights. As a fan, as a player, as a coach, you want the games under the lights. But the European games were absolutely incredible. We went to Hungary before we played Liverpool. We beat them. It was an amazing atmosphere there. Winning the Scottish Cup. I get a bit of stick for this because people keep on saying I go on about it all the time, but I'm sure Ruddy will have a few words to say about that. But yeah, I mean, scoring in a cup final, I'd been unlucky. I'd missed out on 3 cup finals previous to that one. So obviously to be able to play in one, score in one, win it against the biggest rival was amazing. As you can see up in the top corner, to be able to share it with me, my family, my son was only 6 months old, and I've got pictures obviously that mean the world to me.
Is that the last bit of it? Mal's just asked a question there. Mal, do you want to unmute yourself, mate, and just ask Danny, or do you want to read it out? It's up to you.
Yeah, can you hear this?
Yeah, you're in, mate.
Hi, Danny.
Hi, pal.
Yeah, I was just asking if you knew like what the path would be like at the start of your career and how difficult it kind of worked out in some stages. Would you still do it now? I'm just thinking like how some kids might think it's all good once they're signed by an academy or a league side and not realising some of the pitfalls and challenges ahead.
Yeah, I think obviously now it's as a manager, that's when you look at it as a manager, your lifespan as a manager, if you're failing, is very short. So sometimes it's harder to throw in a youngster. I think it's very easy to throw in a youngster if your lifespan's a lot longer. As a player, I was given an opportunity at 16 years old to go and play, and I was given an opportunity that I was going to rise through the leagues. Look, I could have taken a different path, and it could have been completely different. I would never look back at anything and say I would have done that different or that differently. I've always lived by the thing that what's for me will never pass me by, and that's even something I've done through my career now. And that now is, I think it's harder than ever for a youngster to have the career and break into the professional game. It's probably harder than ever. I think the ones now that are at 16, 17-year-old have got a great opportunity after this pandemic. I think the clubs will go a lot younger. But I also think that youngsters need to have a change in mentality as well, in the fact that it will not get given to them. They have to work hard for it. And I think some of them think as soon as you're in the academy that's you're done, or you're into a first team, that's you're done. And it's not. It's the complete opposite. The easiest part is getting in. As silly as that sounds, the easiest part is getting into a team. The hardest part is staying in a team or staying in the academy and staying in the club for a long period of time, because comfortability is one of the biggest things that can hamper anybody at any level. If you're comfortable, then you think that you've done enough or you're doing enough, and you're probably not, because there'll be people that will be doing 10 times more. I was on a call last week with a manager, and he said, I was talking to a lad and he was the hardest working in his dressing room. Well, he said, yeah, but he's the hardest working in our dressing room. Does that mean he's the hardest working player in the championship? No, it doesn't. It means he's the hardest working there. But if you want to get to the Premier League, what you're talking about, you have to be the hardest working in the championship. So you have to probably up your work rate by another 25, 30%, because there's another 10, 15, 20 people that want that place in the Premier League. So again, the pathway now is a lot harder. In my eyes, I think it is. I think the numbers will probably agree with me on that. And again, I think it's something that kids will look at sometime, youngsters will look at. I think it's all rosy, and they'll see Messi's, Ronaldo's and the Premier League boys on 250, 300 grand a week and think that's what I want. And the harsh reality of it is that's a very, very tiny percentage, but you can still have a great career playing lower league professional football at any level.
Cheers, Dan. Oh, sorry, I've maybe missed two out of here. This is Ruddy's. I can't deal, Ruddy, with your fly-ins here. There's two more on the bottom there, mate.
There's a few. Yeah, obviously one of the highlights were to play for Carlisle was amazing, and that's what obviously I always ever wanted, was to come back and play for Carlisle at some point in my career. And then obviously to be made captain for the club, and that was again another special moment for me. To lead out any team. I think there's one more on there, James. If Ruddy's done it right. If he hasn't. Obviously, as a hometown boy, to lead your team out at Anfield when we played Liverpool away was again something that I'll never forget. And finishing my career at Carlisle was what I wanted to do. I'll never forget my first interview with John Coleman from the News and Star. Said that this is where I'll finish my career. I finished last summer. I had a two-year contract offer from a team in League Two, but I wasn't interested. I'd done what I wanted to do.
With us, mate. I'm just clicking through. Oh. Oof. Right. I'm going to put them all up, Danny, and then you can work through them. I can't deal with this system.
Told you, Ruddy.
Yeah, go on, fire away, mate.
Yeah, obviously laws. I think obviously, as you said there, James, everyone thinks as a professional footballer the lows of a career, the highs of a career are always rolling through, and you have very little highs. The feeling of a high is 10 times better than a feeling of a low, but you have so many more lows, so that's why you keep on going. Obviously, lows in my career, I was released from Carlisle United as a kid. Unfortunately, I was away on my loan period when Gretna got to the cup final against Hearts, and I actually missed out on being on the bench for the cup final. I didn't find out until the day previous to that, which was obviously absolutely heartbreaking because I'd actually been on the bench in the earlier round, but because I was eligible for the semi-final, I wasn't allowed to play or be involved in the final, so that was obviously gut-wrenching. Rupturing my ACL ligament and missing 9 months of football was massive for me, and at that point there was quite a bit of interest for me regards to a transfer down to England, which is obviously my biggest thing was to try and play as high as I could in England, but I just at that point I knew it had gone. Struggling to get my form back was a real low in my career. For the life of me, I couldn't realise what it was, and it's like anything, if you miss 9 months of anything, you're going to be a bit rusty and take you a while to get back up. Falling out with the management, as I spoke about at St Mirren, it was a real hard one that for me, because that's not in my demeanour. It's not something that I like doing, is falling out with people above me, unless obviously there's a valid reason, and at that point there wasn't a valid reason. It was more frustration, probably more than anything. Losing the semi-final of the playoffs with Carlisle, any Carlisle fans in here, obviously people will know from the area, the night we went down to Exeter and lost with the last kick of the game was absolutely heartbreaking, and it's something even now that I look at and I think, yeah, we were so close and we should have done it that year. And then a big low in my career is we failed to get promoted with Carlisle. With the squads that we've had at Carlisle United, we should have been promoted. So again, that's something that I look at as a failure. Yeah, anybody that obviously people don't all know me, obviously, but I've got my own academy. So the reason I started that, first of all, it was to get some experience in the coaching side of it. Me and Gary Dicker went out to local grassroots teams. We spoke to a few coaches, asked if we could do a few sessions, and we realised there was a few good players here. So we said, why don't we put a team together, play against Carlisle United? We done that, and we ended up getting 2 lads picked up. Realised there was a scope for this, so we looked to bridge the gap between the grassroots clubs and the professional group. I always think that there's a big scale in grassroots, from the best player in anybody's squad to the one with the least ability, and as it should be, grassroots should be catered for everybody. But sometimes I feel like the best players in each group sometimes don't get the challenge that they need, and that was our opportunity that we looked for, to try and find to bridge that gap and give them ones the challenges, and we found that it's been successful. We play against professional academies. Players get challenged week in, week out, and I'm trying to get young lads opportunities that I had. We've had teams. We played teams in the SPL, teams in the Championship in England, Newcastle, Sunderland, teams like that. And again, it's just giving lads as many opportunities as we can, and that's what I wanted to do right from the start. Yeah, and then obviously touching on my work at Reds transition from being a player to stepping into being a manager and that side of it. The challenges that we had from the first day that I took the job. Obviously, the first challenge was trying to get rid of the assistant manager, but I had to keep him, unfortunately. So, but no, we had challenges. I had to find what I needed to do, the ways that I wanted to do things. I'm very stubborn in how I want to do things. I've got a certain way I want to play. I've got a certain type of player I want to recruit, and I want players that, as cheesy as it sounds, wherever I go, I want them to play for the badge, because it's the clubs that they get a chance to play for. They've got to make sure that they work hard for it. Obviously, after that, our challenges, I had to recruit a staff. I was very lucky in the fact that I'm very, very lucky in the fact that I've got Ruddy as my assistant manager. I've fallen on my feet with him. We recruited Gary Roundtree as a coach who knew the club inside out, and that was something that I knew I needed to do. I needed someone who could help me know the club, and that's a big thing Gary was brought in for, as well as being player and coach, is that we knew that he knew the club inside out, and that's what we needed. We then brought in a physio, a sports scientist, because the modern game's moved on and you can't just run them in and expect to get results. So I wanted to go down the scientific side of it, who I brought Lee Ferdin, who again in my eyes is one of the best sports scientists I've ever worked with, and brings a lot to the table. We then had recruitment. We didn't obviously. Anybody who knows where I work at, it's not very easy to recruit players up there. They think Penrith's close, and then they look on the map and see it's another hour and a half up to Workington, or however far. So we knew that we had to go a little bit more local. And I think obviously when you look at the local talent that we did recruit, in the likes of Robbie Hebson, Matty Clark, Brad Hubbold, Nathan Watson, players like that, and then obviously you like your Ash Kellys, Jordan Little, Charlie Bowmans. It shows that there's a lot of talent in the area, and that's what we wanted to recruit, a local team. We didn't want players travelling 2 and 3 hours for training, because I said from day one that we wanted players buying into what we had, and that was being at training every single week. And there was none of this, they'll turn up when you can. It was, if you're not at training, you're not picked, and it's simple as that, unless there's a valid reason for it, which obviously that was my biggest challenge, was getting over that football wasn't people's priority, which I completely understand, because it's not their number one income. At the end of the day, everyone's life revolves around putting a roof over your head, so your income is the most important thing for people. And if my life's all been about football, my number one priority, I didn't get a choice when I went on holiday. I was told when I was allowed to go on holiday, and people coming to me midway through pre-season saying they were going on holiday. I just couldn't get my head around, and that's why I was lucky to have Ruddy and Gaz, because they were telling me that this is normal, you need to get used to it. So there was that side of it that I had to get used to. We got the recruitment right in my eyes. The pre-season routine that we all decided on, the game programme, how many games, where we'd play, in a transition between a relegated team and a team that knowing that had to go up and challenge for a title. We didn't want it to be too hard, because lads' confidence was very low. We knew that we had to try and build confidence up and play maybe a few lesser teams and get these lads firing again. Because anybody that knows Workington players, there's some real good players there. So it was that side of it mixed in with the running and the fitness side of it. But then also we had our style of play that I've touched on before, that I'm very passionate about, and I'm very stubborn when it comes to it. I've got a team that I want to play out from the back at all costs, and it's cost us a couple of times. But I think it's also probably created more opportunities than it's hampered us. We don't play for playing's sake. We're forward thinking, but we've got a style that we stick to, and the boys know the roles and responsibilities inside there. And from the early days, from the first day I took a pre-season training, was that we're going to win this league, and that was something that I'd never had as a professional, but it was something that I felt that it's a way I want to coach. And it's something that, speaking to some of the players, that they really bought into, and the fact that you set targets of three or four games, busy periods. Me and Ruddy would set targets of, you have to go and get 9, 12 points out of this next 3 or 4 games. And every time we've done that, they've produced. And I think if you tell them that they have to do it, and as a team chasing the championship, that was something that I felt that we had to do. We had to set a target. We told them from day one, nothing less than the championship is acceptable. I think if in any way life, in football, if you give anybody an inch, they'll take a mile. If you say we can ease off and if we get promoted through the playoffs, it's fine, then yes, you're still getting the same goal. But if you fail at that goal, you're not getting promoted. If we failed at winning the championship, we'd have got into the playoffs, which would have still given us our opportunity to get our goals. So we set our standards high from day one, and that's something that we targeted right the way through the season, and something that we spoke about right the way through the season, telling people that it wasn't acceptable that we wouldn't win this league.
Oh, good stuff, mate. Guys, it's 57 minutes, coming up 58 minutes to 8. So rather than going to the questions, it's probably a good time just have a short break. But before you do, just have a think if there's anything that's come out from that, from how Danny spoke. You've heard how passionate, how honest he speaks, even about, I mean, he's probably told you a lot of things there that you probably didn't have to. So you've got an opportunity. I know there's some questions coming, one around Reds in particular, and then some more just on his sort of career. So if you want, it probably a right time to sort of have a quick break. We'll do the NHS clap. So that's at 8 o'clock, and then Daniel take sort of any questions and cover anything off. If you, when it comes to your question, if you want to unmute yourself, do, or if not, me or Ben can ask the questions, guys. But definitely some things to think about in there for you. So for everybody, I've got some questions here if we get short, and I'm sure Rudy's got a good long list, Danny, of questions.
That's
so,
why I thought if I give a little bit, he'll go easy on me.
I noticed how you put your picture in there, Ruddy, on the presentation. Snooky selling.
I can't believe I'm not getting credit for this presentation, by the way. This was all me, not him.
Yeah, no bother. Yeah, guys. So, like I say, it's 58 minutes too. If you just want to break, pause for a few minutes. If you're just in the chat function, drop in when you're back in. So if you just, as per usual, just drop in when you're back, and then we will get cracked on and cover any questions off. But thanks very much for that, Dan, for that, certainly that first hour.
That's me back, pal.
Yeah, no worries, mate. There's a few coming back in now, so we'll give it another minute and then we'll try and start at the top, mate, and then fire through. You'll have seen, can you see the chat function?
No, where's it at? Oh, there.
Yeah, so if you click on the chat function, you'll start to see the questions that are coming in. So when you scroll, if you just scroll down and through it, you'll see. So if we we'll be back up. We asked Miles. So
Yeah.
Miles is that one. Paul's definitely, that was my fault because didn't click that through, so that's right. Daz Gaffney's got one around futsal, mate. And so we'll work from there downwards, Paul, if that's all right.
Yeah, no problem.
I think most people start to come back in. Daz Gaffney, are you back in, pal? There it is. Said he's back. Daz, are you there, Gaffney? Was that yeah? Can't quite hear him. Come back to him because he might just be coming back from the thing. So Paul Carrigan, are you there?
Yes, James.
Do you want to fire away, mate, with your one around the hunger of the game?
Yeah. Thanks, Danny. That was really interesting.
No problem at all.
Just around the level of income at the top level, and in players who are playing in the Premier League under 23, for instance, when you get kids dropping down into League One and League Two on loan or to gain some experience, have you seen a gradual change in attitude of some of these kids over the years? Did it reflect on the fact that they were so well played playing in under 23 football that they really didn't want to get involved in the nitty gritty of League One and League Two football?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me is like the word you've used there is a hunger. Do they have a hunger to be successful as a footballer, or are they happy to be classed as a footballer by playing for an under 23s team? And again, that looks around the loan system. Players from the top end of the divisions, your under 23s, very, very small minority of them actually want to go out on loan. They don't want to do it anymore. They're quite happy playing this football, under 23s football of you have the ball, we have the ball. Under 23s football, for me, isn't real football. And many coaches I speak to say the exact same thing. It is not first team football. You will develop far quicker being in a first team environment than you will in a high end academy. And I think sometimes players don't realise that after under 23s, we've had a couple that we've spoke to at Reds that have been at very, very high academies but can't get a club now because they're setting the standards so high. Or, well, I'm not going to drop from a top-end Premiership club to a non-league team. Yeah, but you're not getting anyone in between wanting you, so you've got to start somewhere. And this is the biggest problem that we have at the moment, is the fact that there's not enough hunger to go out and develop. I was on my UEFA A badge when I was doing my course. I got speaking to a coach, and I'll not mention them in the club because I don't think it's fair, but they were saying their loan manager has control of 63 players in the loans. And out of them 63 players, not one player is on less than £12,000 a week. Now, if you're giving an 18-year-old to 23-year-old £12,000 a week, they ain't going to have the hunger because they can go and get anything they want in life. So for me, the hunger, it's got to come from both sides of it. Clubs don't want to lose their players, i.e. your Pogbas and players like that at the top end, but they've got to take a responsibility to give them lads the hunger and the drive to go and be successful in my eyes.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Thank you.
No problem.
Darren's just asked us to ask it, Danny, so I know you can see it there. So, your opinion on futsal? It's proven in other countries that it benefits a child's progression. Should it be brought in football academies for a different angle on a child's development?
This is something I'm very split on, if I'm honest. I think at times it's got a place, and I do. I think for the speed and a technical side of it, yes, I think it has got a place. But it also does, in my eyes, create some bad habits if they're playing it for a prolonged period. I think if it was a multi-sport programme that you brought in and you were jumping in and out of futsal and it didn't become that side of it, I think it's a very hard one to say if you're doing it on a constant basis that you're not going to pick up habits from a futsal way of playing, because it's a different way of playing to football. But again, I think if it's multi-sport, I had this conversation with Ruddy and Ben Benson not a while ago about multi-sports and things like that, and I agree it should be in, but I don't think it should be in as a constant bit of the programme, because I do feel that it can pick up bad habits. I've got lads in my academy who I can straight away tell who play futsal and who don't, because of the way they manoeuvre the ball sometimes, and it's sole of the feet type things. But again, I definitely would say there's a place for it, but it's making sure that it's done in the right way, that you don't then create bad habits.
Good stuff, mate. Anil, are you there? If not, I can ask. He asked, what qualities did Jeff, I think he's referring to Jeff Jeffries when you mentioned earlier, have which your other managers didn't? Or what did you like most about Jeff?
I think obviously, just as I said, regards to your question, is the fact that he knew the time and place when to say things, and I wouldn't say he had any other qualities that other managers didn't have, because I played with managers that had great man management skills, but just in a period, I think that I was at a very, very low point, he pulled me around, and he'd done it perfectly. And as I said in there, just little comments, throwaway comments that probably didn't mean a lot in the grand scheme of things, but made me feel like I was starting to get back to where I knew I could be.
Dan Ferguson. Dan, are you there, Paul?
Hello, mate. How's it going?
Yeah, good. You?
Yeah, not too bad. Hey, Danny, how's it going, mate? All right. Just with relating to Carlisle Centre of Excellence, when you were there, was there any of the players that have gone through into pro football, or did they all drop away? Because obviously there wasn't many taken on back then.
Yeah, there was one player, and that was John Slaven. He was the only player out of my squad that went on and played professional football.
Many of the other ones dropped away and not playing anymore, or?
From what I know, there's probably only one or two that are probably even still playing at a local level, as in like a grassroots level or a Sunday League level. But as far as I'm aware, half of them don't even play. I think there's one of them was Paul Rea, who obviously he's done quite a bit with the futsal. His brother's done a bit with the futsal, so he helps out and plays that quite a bit. But apart from that, there's not many that I can remember that have gone on and carried on playing for a prolonged period.
Do you reckon that's down to being let down at 16 and then falling out of love, or do you reckon it's just down to not wanting to play?
I think it was very hard when it was a 16-year-old, as a 14-year-old, but as a 16-year-old, when you've got a little bit more things going on with your body and there's more temptations around. As I've said previously, that there's lads I know who fell out at 15, 16, who then found girls and found drink and found good nights on the weekend rather than playing football, and that's something that I used to love a good night out, but I didn't do it as often as what I'd like to have done as a 17, 18-year-old. But you look at it and you think, you know what, that's a sacrifice I made, and I think some people maybe just didn't want that, or was there somewhere to fall back to? Obviously, we look at Carlisle United now. If the 16-year-olds don't get taken, are they good enough to step up to Reds? That's something that we look at now. Then obviously we've got many avenues looking at that side of it as well.
Great. Cheers for that, mate. Thanks very much.
No problem.
Huey, Andrew Houston, are you there, pal? quite a straightforward one, I suppose, Danny. And it was, I'll assume if she's not there, did you have to change your game after your ACL injury?
No. I had to change my approach. I had to be in training about 45 minutes earlier to do all my prehab work, my strengthening work. Once you've done your ACL, you've got to still keep on top of everything like that. Mobility. I lost about, I think it was about 3 degrees of range, which doesn't sound a lot, but when you're in a running mechanics, it's quite a lot. So I spent a lot of time with keeping my legs elevated with a weight on my knee to try and press that down and get that flexion back, which even to the day I still struggle to do now. So yeah, I mean, there was days where I had my reconstruction. I had the graft taken from my hamstring, so I had half my hamstring tendon cut out to use as my new ACL, and it was work with Dolly at Carlisle United that. When I got to the pre-seasons, I was getting a lot of cramping up a lot quicker than what I usually did, and it was a program that Dolly set me that obviously I kept going, and there was days I had to take that back. And the older I got, I had to take 2-day recoveries instead of just one. Normally I'd get up on a Monday morning and I'd be great, but the older I got, I had to be 2 days recovery, and I'd recover on a Monday as well, and do gym sessions and things like that rather than going full blown in training.
Good stuff, Simon. Down at yours, are you there? I'm not sure on surname.
Hi boys, you alright?
Yeah, good mate.
All right.
Okay. Yeah. Hi Dan. Reading between the lines, you seem to have respected and not taken to disciplinarian managers when you were playing. Is that something you've taken into your own management style?
I'll say no. I'm very light-hearted. No, it's not so much the disciplinarian. It was the beliefs in the hard work and that side of it that comes first. I'm a big believer in that. If you work hard, you'll get what you deserve, and that's something that I am massive on now. Any of the lads at Reds, whether they're the youngest player in the squad or whether they're the oldest player, whether they're an under-9 at my academy or an under-16, if they make a mistake, I'll accept it. It happens. We're all human, and it's something we speak about every Saturday just before they go out. Every single player will make a mistake on a football pitch. Everybody will make mistakes on the sideline. We should have changed formation before they scored or things like that. But what we don't accept is lack of hard work. And now that's it's the little things that can make a big difference. Your work rate, being on time, respecting the decisions, whatever it is that your manager has, that side of it. I think if you take that into it, then there's no reason why you can't be successful. And that's something that even now we take in with us at Reds, and even at my academy. There's rules, there's jobs, there's responsibilities. Even for the little 7-8-year-old, you have to put the kit away. It's your responsibility to put the kit into a pile, pick the cones up, put them in the right colours. It's little things like that, and I know a lot of grassroots people will do that as well. But it's little things like that we add in, and each year they get more responsibility. And that's something that I think if you give them responsibility, you give them discipline and ask for the hard work, the rest of it will shine through.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Thank you.
No problem.
Dan tired, Dan, so I know he's asked us to ask it. So Danny and staff done a great job with Reds this season. Do you think with the seasons that you've had, can the Reds keep hold of the likes of Liam Brockbank and Kieran Casson?
I'll be honest with you, I think it's the best thing our best chance of us keeping hold of them is the fact that the coronavirus has come around, because I don't think many teams will come in and spend a bit of money, because obviously they're contracted to us. We wouldn't just let them walk away for free. There has been interest in them because there's scouts at games every week, and we have had interest in them, and me, Ruddy and all the staff and even most of the players agree that them two both have got a real opportunity of being in the full-time game. I think their attitude towards development and coming into the way they have and performing the way they have is a testament to them, because not many people will come out of youth football after taking a setback like they have, not getting the pro, right on the brink of the pro, and then all of a sudden you look at them now and they're absolutely flying. And for me, this has been a great year for them, and I think the development will just keep getting better and better because they're both sponges, they both want to listen, they both want to learn, and they're not scared to ask questions. And again, I think obviously Rudy will probably back me up when I say this, in the fact that you probably go a long way to find two youngsters that have come into Reds after leaving Carlisle and having as big an impact of what them two have had.
Good stuff. Daz, do you want to unmute yourself, mate? And you've just said you've got a question around coaching philosophy.
Evening, gents. Yeah, it was basically, I just wanted to ask whether or not the philosophy that you have for the Reds is something similar to what you have with your academy. And if it is it kind of not watered down, but is it along the same sort of lines and make it understandable for the academy boys? And are all your players and within the academy and the Reds, are they aware of how this philosophy is going to be coming across to them?
Yeah, I think obviously something that I looked at when I first got, obviously the academy came along first, and it was, how can I make the game as simple as I can? And the biggest thing for me was two things that I've taken from when I was doing my badges was that if you're under pressure, do you have to pass? If you don't, can you travel with the ball and make someone make a decision? So that was the first part. And 99% of the time, the first pass you see is the correct pass, so play it. So they were two things that we built the first part of our things around. We also speak to the youngsters now, and we have a big emphasis on that. If you're in a 1v1 situation, can you beat them? Or if you're in a 2v1, who's a spare man and where do we find it? And again, as you've said there, we've just added legs on it each year. We've grown it. And it is something that I think it's very easy for us at the academy to have a philosophy the way we have it, in the fact that we say you play out all the time, or if we don't play out, what are we doing? Do we still have midfielders moving people around? And we say that even to the under-9s, but we are only playing one-off games against teams and things like that. So it's a case of it's only a one-off game. We'd rather see our lads, and I'm sure most of the grassroots coaches in here be the same. I'd rather see our lads get beat 10-0 and play well than win 1-0 and play horrendously. And 9 times out of 10, they enjoy it when they played well and they don't care about the score. But the biggest thing for us is that we added it on year after year. And now our Reds, if you went and watched our under-9 team at the academy, you would still see some of the building blocks that we have in the Reds first team. And it's just something that I think it's the way I want to do things. Is it right or is it wrong? It works for us at the moment. The biggest thing I always say about football is football's a game of opinions, and everyone's philosophy will be different. If everyone's was the same, every game would finish 0-0 or 10-all. And I just feel that at the moment the best way for me to get the best out of the lads in my academy, and the best way for me and Rudy and the club to get the best out of Reds is the way we're playing, and I think that it's shown this year.
Just to kind of add on, sorry James, just to add on, out of the managers that you work from, is it one in particular that you kind of touch on more with regards to your philosophy that kind of had a bigger input on what you're doing now?
Not at all, if I'm honest with you. I take quite a lot from all my managers in the side of it. Me as a person, me as a manager, but my philosophy is the way I want to do things. Again, there's phases of play, there's set pieces that I've worked with that we've tried, and yes, it will take some of them things, but my philosophy is how me and Rudy see the best way of getting the best out of Reds. The biggest things I've moulded myself on is taking the good bits and the bad bits from every manager that I've worked under. Now, whether that's little things that I didn't like, I try not to do them, because I know from the other side of the table as a player, I didn't like them. So will my captain like that at Reds? Probably not. So I'm not going to do it. I'm always as honest as I can be with the lads, because I always felt that honesty was the right way to go with them.
Appreciate that, Danny. Thank you very much.
No problem at all.
Ben Coulter, I think that kind of answers yours as well, mate. So just asking around the two connections with the Cumbria Academy and working, and it kind of brings us into Dan's question, Dan Tyer's question as well, Danny. So You're probably expecting this, I'm guessing. What do you think about the Reds in the community and the work that Brian Dawson and his team are, and do you think that Reds will see the benefits of this in years to come?
I hope so. I think Brian does a great job. I think me and Brian have a very similar concept. Obviously, Brian's linked with Reds in the community, and mine's Cumberland Football Academy. I think we're both very similar in what we do. We try and showcase these lads to pro clubs, and there's some that won't make the grade. But as I've always said to our lads at 16 leaving, there's still a good wage to be made, and a good living and a good standard of football to play, even if you're playing semi-professional. So I think the work Brian does is great. I think he works well with me and Ruddy. Ruddy's got a great understanding, obviously, of the youth side of it. He's someone that's very knowledgeable about getting the best out of youngsters as well as first team. But I think it can only benefit Reds in the future if with two avenues like mine and Brian's coming through. I think it gets these lads playing at a slightly higher level, getting challenged a little bit more, without taking them away from grassroots, and they can still enjoy the mates and have fun with the mates at grassroots. But they can come and have a little bit more of a challenge playing against some of these academies, and that's no disrespect to anybody at grassroots football. I think that's just some of these lads can handle maybe slightly more of a challenge. Maybe not ready for academy football yet because that's why they haven't been picked up. But I think when you look at what Workington Reds have in the fact that they've got people like Connor Tinian, Dan Wordsworth, Scotty Allison's, people like that have been around Workington Reds for a long, long time. I think where's the next one of them coming through? And we have to find them, because unless you're going willing to pay a hell of a lot of money to find people like that, you have to produce your own. And that's something that we are big on. We've got things happening with Bry and the reserves next year behind the scenes. We're hoping to get put into place. So hopefully we can get that sorted and keep progressing the Reds moving forward.
Good stuff. Bill Redden, are you there, pal?
I am, mate. Evening, Danny.
Hiya, Bill. You all right?
All right, mate. Well, first of all, obviously, well done to you and Ruddy and the boys this season. You've had a superb year. It's been great to watch. But the big thing for me was the massive change in style. So effective and so immediate, almost. Obviously, it wasn't immediate to you guys, the hours that you put in on the training field. But the question that I've got around that was, coming from a full-time environment for so long, on top of the challenges of non-league football, with like the commitment that you've talked about and the people working and different priorities and stuff, you managed to implement that style of play so quickly. How big of a challenge was that for you, and how did you go about implementing that plan?
To be honest with you, you'll see, obviously I know you come to a few of our games, you'll see the same way we play, in the fact that we'll break lines in the same way, and it's literally a pattern of play, and that is literally all it is. We've got a pattern of play. I've got 3 or 4 scenarios. There's only 3 or 4 scenarios that can happen when you're playing out from the back. Yeah. So we ask the question, we always look for our free man. So the free man is always 9 times out of 10 is a centre half, the way we get them to drop deep. If a striker then presses a goalkeeper from a striker, we have to find the free centre half. How do we do it? With our wall pass with Kieran Casson or Tinners or Hubble or Carroll, whoever's in there. We've also been brave. The biggest thing for us is the fact that we said to them from day one was, if they ever give the ball away playing out from the back, it's not their fault. It's our fault. And that is something that we've always said. That I can't ask them to go and do something in the most dangerous part of the pitch and then turn around and lambast them when they make a mistake. Because unfortunately, when they make a mistake, it's going to end up in the back of our net, which it has 2 or 3 times. Yeah. But we also look back at our goals this season, and some of the goals that we've scored playing out from the back and chances we've created have been incredible. Now, for me, I work on a red, amber and green zone, and your red zones, you're playing out from the back zone, because you give the ball away there, you're in danger. You give it away in the middle third, you've got a little bit less chance of conceding a goal, but you give it away in the green area, it doesn't really matter because you'll get it back. I also feel that the way we play, comments that we've had from players is the fact that, we feel so fit, we always get the ball back so quickly. But that's because we play short passes. We don't look for long passes. But we also, I feel, after our Ramsbottom game where we got beat, we didn't change our way, but we added another dimension, which was teams were starting to press us a lot, and they felt that we were never going to go in behind. When we have the pace of Dav Simington, Nathan Waterson's, Milanic Ali, sometimes it's a case of you flip one over the top because you're going to create more space. So going back to your question on regards how hard was it to implement, it wasn't as hard as what you would think, because all I asked them to do was phases of play. We went through where we wanted every player to be. As soon as the ball goes out for a goal kick, this is where we need you to be. It was probably harder for the likes of Goose and Sam and players like that to start with, because I'm telling them to go and stand in line with the 6-yard box.
Yeah.
And they've probably never done it. But there's no pressure on them. When you give them the license to have no pressure and no worries and no worry about making a mistake, you find out that you'll get the reward a lot quicker.
I think you could see that as well, to be fair, from pretty much the second or third game of the season. You could see the confidence that they had, especially Jim in goal. Just even a bad pass it didn't stop him doing it again.
No, and I think that's something that we need to make sure that we keep pushing through, and that's not just in the first team. Where the reserves, we expect the reserves to play the same way, which they do with Brian. We want my academy to play the same way. Obviously, Brian's buying into what the club are wanting to do, so the juniors are going to play that. Hopefully, the Reds in the community will go that way as well. So I think when we play out from the back, people think playing out the back is just a case of playing out the back, make it look good, but it's not. We want a team to come and try and press us, and we're looking to break as many lines as we can as quickly as possible and create opportunities. And I think when you're the highest scorers in the league as well as the best defence in the league, I think sometimes you look at it and you say, do you know what? Yeah, we've done something right in regards to how our style of play.
Definitely. Thanks a lot for that, Dan. Cheers. All the best, mate.
Cheers.
Just go Rowty. I'll come back to the futsal stuff because I've got a link, so I know the guys that were into the futsal and that, and were on the call maybe with Scoobs and Ian Bateman. I'll find the link and post it on our website. So, and it gives a different perspective. I think you've heard sort of Danny's perspective on it. I suppose, Danny, from a futsal perspective as well, it probably wasn't around when you were growing up, was it? In terms of your sort of access to it. So again, we've got to take that as it comes. Rowty, how
is that I'm not saying it hasn't got a place. This is one thing I've always said. It has got a place if it's done correctly. My son plays through the winter. They go into the sports halls and things like that. I think if you're playing it constantly, and it's a different game to football in my eyes. But look, I'm not saying I'm right. I'd never say I'm right. That's my opinion. I'm not going to sit there and say other people are wrong because they think futsal's great. If there's scientific proof, brilliant. But there'll be a lot of players that have never kicked a futsal ball and made a professional career out of it. So there's more than one way that can be successful. That's what I would always say.
Good stuff. How do you manage keeping all the lads happy when they're out the match day squad, or deal with them if they aren't happy?
The most important people, I was taught this again through my career. The most important people aren't the 1 to 11. It's the 12 to 18. You've got to look after 12 to 18. 1 to 11 are happy. They're playing. That's all you want to do as a footballer. You want to play. You don't need the manager patting you on the back. You have to look after the subs and you have to look after the lads who aren't on the squad. Make sure they realise that they're as important as everyone. And that's something that we said right from day one. And Rudy will again back me up. And the lads will have heard the same thing. 11 players will never make a club successful, but a squad can. And that's something I said from day one in pre-season. Our 11 couldn't win that league on their own, but that squad could, and we should have. And that's something that we always said was that we just get a buy-in. You get the same people that are buying in all the time, and it breeds. It breeds. I don't know if anybody's seen it, but we have a video that we show, and the lads, every single one of the lads are jumping around the dressing room. We have a sing song after games and things like that. It's just you want to have them have a buy into what we want to do.
Good stuff. Chris P, I'll ask because his internet connection is in the States, so his internet connection might go. Best player ever played with and against, and best game you ever played in, Matt?
I've been obviously lucky to play against the best player to grace the planet in Messi. I got to play against him in a pre-season friendly, so definitely say him. Best player to play with, it's quite a difficult one because you go off consistency and you know what you're going to get with some lads. I've played with 4 or 5 lads at Carlisle that you go, do you know what? You would want him in your team every single week because you know you're going to get an 8 out of 10 every single week. But for me, when I was at Hearts, we had a player called Rudy Scatchell, and he could be quiet for 85 minutes and score a hat-trick in the last 5 minutes with his left foot. He had an absolute hammer of a left foot and never missed a target. So he's probably the best player I've played with. I've played with, obviously, Scottish internationals and things like that I've been lucky to say that I've shared a dressing room with. And the best game I've played in, probably a toss-up between Liverpool away in the European Cup and also in the Europa League, and the Cup final. I think the two atmospheres were absolutely electric.
Good stuff. Anil, I know you didn't ask earlier, so I'll ask for you. Do you think football is now more inclusive, or does more need to be done within the game? For example, the Premier League, we've heard racist chants towards players, and this has also happened across the European leagues. What's your view on this?
I think obviously the first and foremost, obviously, is that it can't happen. It shouldn't be happening at any level. Now, I think there's the biggest issue, obviously, around the racism side on the big stage. Unless you're caught on camera doing it, there's that many people around you. You can sort of, it's a blame culture, it wasn't me type thing. Whereas at our level, you hear every word heard. I do think, obviously, that more needs to be done. In my eyes, a slap on the wrist or a warning isn't enough. It's a lifetime ban for me, because then you will literally you'll stop it. I mean, we've all seen the pictures and the videos on the news when I think it was it Man City when the lad was going to take the corner? Was it Sterling going to take the corner? You hear a lot about it for 1 or 2 weeks, but then it sort of dies off again, and then it happens again, and we get a big blow up of it. But I definitely think there needs to be more. It has to be harsher punishments when it comes to obviously the racist chants and things like that, for sure.
So, I actually think that's it. There's one under there, guys, and I dropped it in. I've got Ben to drop it in. So Danny's talked a lot about in his career around the clubs, and I think one point you were mentioning around players going out on loans and getting their working hard to get up to that level. I just listened today to Dean Henderson's Pass on the Gloves with Tim Dittmer. The link's in there. That's part 1 of 4. What I'd say is there's a lot of key messages that Dean talks about with Tim that Danny spoke about tonight. And there's obviously a commonality between these players that are making it at the top level and they're sort of in a drive, which I think Danny talked about earlier. So feel free just to check that out. It's just a resource that's definitely worth a listen on there. Don't think there's any more in there. I think that's it, Danny. I think you've guys, if there is anything else, I'm just going to share my screen again because I've got a couple of things. If there is anything else, just quickly fire it in. This is your sort of last opportunity with Danny there. Bear with me. Let me just when you share your screen and then you end it. Bear with me a second. There we are. I think that just leaves us to say thank you, Danny. I've known Danny a while, and the stuff that he's sort of doing is really, really good, as is Brian with the stuff that he's doing that's been mentioned this evening. So what I would say is check it out. I said to Danny a while ago, we met up at the Cumbria Academy, and people have always got an opinion, and Danny, you've heard Danny's quite happy to give his opinions on things tonight, and the key with it is they're just opinions, and that's the key around it. But you'll probably find that if you've got any questions, Danny's first there to open up, talk honestly, and you don't get that quite often. So just thank you, Danny, for tonight, because it's been a slightly different angle to what we've had for the last sort of 7 weeks, but hopefully an enjoyable one. I know I've enjoyed the last sort of hour and 40 minutes. So thanks very much for that, Danny.
No problem at all. Like I said at the start, thanks very much for having us on.
No worries. We spoke, so me, Ruddy and Danny have spoke, so later on in the weeks, if people are, because Reds is obviously hot topic at the minute, it's hot on the agenda, it's what Danny's sort of invested in. Obviously, a lot of you have seen how well that they have done this season. Unfortunately, with the pandemic, which can't be helped, it's sort of killed us as a sort of football society. But we're looking at potentially looking at something specific around Reds. So more detail around how he's implemented the things he's implemented. Taking a team low on confidence, probably you could argue struggling for the players that they had, to riding the top of the league and pretty much dominating at times. So you might hear more from Danny and Ruddy if that's what people are interested in the coming weeks. You'll certainly hear from Ruddy. I think he's dying to jump on. Which brings us on to next week. So I don't know if Ed's there. So again, we're going from a player right to probably the other end of the spectrum. Ed, are you there, pal?
I am indeed. How are you doing, guys?
Ed, do you want to just introduce yourself a little bit about what you currently do, and then sort of the topic that we're going to cover for next week, just to give them a flavour?
Yeah, great. Thanks, mate. So, hi, everyone. I've just been listening for the last half an hour, so some really interesting stuff. So next week, I'm going to be, well, as the title says, dispelling some myths in coaching. So I guess focused around a few things such as early specialisation, the notion of letting players work it out for themselves, and the role of kind of instruction in coaching is kind of going to be the main emphasis. But it's really about, during this period, I'm sure that you've all seen lots of different content getting produced online. I don't know about anybody else, but I find it all very overwhelming and very difficult to filter through. So going to look at some of the stuff that you might have been kind of seeing or hearing, not just during kind of this period, but more wider than that, particularly via social media. So I'm going to be looking at some of that stuff and just clarifying where the evidence is and where the research is, in the sense of helping you guys think about what that means for your coaching. So that's ultimately what the focus is going to be. So I'll take us through a few contentious issues and hopefully clarify a few things as well.
Good stuff, mate. It's definitely one. So for those that have got a real interest in coaching, in the science behind coaching, in sort of the way in which we do things, Ed is definitely somebody that is at the forefront. I've been fortunate to know him for quite some time. Probably one of my, and he probably knows this, probably one of my critical friends, that them people that you pick up the phone and you just can't work out, and there's someone that gives you some clarity. So certainly tune in. It'll be an interesting one. Like they all have been. It's just a slightly different angle, give you something slightly different in terms of content, but hopefully some things that you can take away from this. So thanks very much for that, Ed, and agreeing to come on next week.
You're welcome. Really looking forward to it.
Cheers, mate. I've ended this all every time, so we've spoke again. I mean, they started off being an hour, so me and Dave Morris struggled to put an hour together. They've grown over the weeks, so we're into an hour and 40 minutes, and I hope people are still finding them useful. Again, we're not precious, so if there's some things that you want to hear change, please do let us know. I'm still working on sort of more guests coming in, so just to give you a flavour in the coming weeks, because I haven't done this before, but I thought I would tonight. So we've got Pete Sturgis coming on in the next couple of weeks. So Pete, as you know, is an absolute genius at working with foundation first players. definitely want to keep in touch with around the DNA stuff. We've got Les Howie coming on, and Les is the previously director of Grassroots Football. So Les has been at probably one of the highest jobs in football, and now looks after an international programme to do with coaching. So Les is going to come on and share some of his insights. I've got a couple of people coming on from academies. So we're trying to mix the guests up, but if there's anybody at all that you think actually be nice to hear from, as I've said on all of these, this is the time. Now, would come on whenever. I know that, but this is the time to get people when they're sort of sat at home and looking for things to do. So again, thank you very much this evening for your time. Once again, thanks again to Danny. Again, just to leave you with the key message, we're still, Cumberland FA are still working in patches. We're part of the fellow programme, like pretty much the whole country is as well. So there's some of us that are still working, but on a rotational basis. So if you don't get an answer straight away, don't panic too much, but we'll get to you. If there's anything that you think of, anything that we can do to help, please just shout up, guys. And once again, hopefully you found this evening useful. Certainly I have, and enjoyed listening. Time on behalf of Cumberland FA, thanks very much, and we will catch up with everybody soon, hopefully.
Cheers, mate. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Danny.